10. Painted masks. A pair of influencers were arrested in a foreign country for a prank that went very, very wrong. One of the pranksters painted her face during the height of the pandemic in 2021, instead of actually wearing a fabric mask. The culprits are Josh Paler Lynn and Leah Sin. They staged the ridiculous stunt by going into a supermarket, with Leah having the bottom half of her face painted blue and white to look like a mask. This was in Indonesia, in Bali. The influencer managed to make it past the security guard and into the supermarket, but that was when they got busted. It was pretty obvious that Leah didn't have a mask on, and that the pair were up to something no good. They couldn't stop giggling, they were filming, and acting generally suspicious. Now, Josh is a Taiwanese content creator who defended his actions by saying it's his job to entertain people. Leah, on the other hand, didn't have any kind of excuse at all. The Russian national had her passport confiscated, as did Josh, and they were brought to an immigration center where they waited to be deported back to their respective nations. Indonesia really doesn't mess around when it comes to breaking their laws, and they really don't like tourists who break laws on camera because they think it's funny. Both of them were deported off the island as soon as possible. 9. Fake officer. If there's one thing you should absolutely never fake, it's being a cop. A man was arrested in South Carolina for impersonating a police officer in June of 2021. The impersonator made the major mistake of pulling over an Assumption Parish sheriff's deputy who happened to be off duty. Vincent Marks turned on his flashing lights as he was driving behind the off-duty officer. The officer pulled into the parking lot of a convenience store, and Vincent blocked him in. He then approached the deputy and flashed a fake badge, but the deputy immediately recognized him. The deputy had seen Vincent before in a domestic incident that he'd been called to earlier that year. The jig was up. Vincent was busted immediately and hauled off to jail. But Vincent wasn't the only guy recently impersonating an officer. On March 4, 2022, another man by the name of Jason Brittenstein was arrested for posing as a cop and trying to extort an undercover cop, a real undercover cop, for inappropriate favors. The undercover officer was part of a sting operation to pick up Johns at a greasy hotel in Westerville, Ohio. That was when Jason showed up as one of the Johns. But rather than offering money in exchange for intimate time alone with a woman, he identified himself as a police officer and started making demands. He said that if she didn't do what he told her, she was going to be in big trouble. In other words, this guy was posing as a cop to try and cheat prostitutes into giving him free service. 8. Victim assistance. Sherry Papini, a mother originally from Redding, California, was reported missing on November 2, 2016. She was discovered 22 days later on the side of the road. Sherry was picked up by a trucker just about 150 miles from her house. It looked as though she had been tied up with rope and abused. She even had a brand on her right shoulder that had been pressed on with hot metal. It looked like she had been through a lot. Sherry told the authorities she was kidnapped by a pair of Hispanic women and held for nearly a month against her will. She described them to an FBI artist, described their vehicle to the police, and a $10,000 reward was offered for any information that would lead to an arrest. The only person who was ever arrested was Sherry Papini herself. The California mother had made the whole thing up. She was faking it. An investigation proved that she had been living with an old boyfriend in Costa Mesa totally of her own volition. She was the one who harmed herself to help support her story. Why would somebody do this? Between 2017 and 2021, Sherry pulled in $30,000 from victim assistance. Plus, her husband helped her raise $49,000 from GoFundMe in 2016. She did it for the money, but now she's looking at up to 20 years in prison and a fine of over $500,000. 7. Catfishing the Teacher. A pair of students bullied their teacher so effectively in 2017 that it made national news and ruined the teacher's life. It's one of the most bonkers stories that you're ever going to hear, so you better strap yourself in. It all started in North Carolina when Brian Joshua Anderson and Brittany Renee Luckenbaugh decided they were going to humiliate their French teacher. That teacher, David Laughinghouse, was 51 years old at the time. The teenagers were only 16. They assumed a single fake identity, uploaded this identity to a social media site, and started catfishing their teacher. The catfishing worked so well that they managed to trick their French teacher into believing he was having a relationship with a real adult woman. In this case, the teens really got the last laugh. Through their fake profile, they convinced their teacher to send naked photos of himself. Then they shared those photos with their classmates and spread them across the internet. The 51-year-old man, who had been working at the high school for 16 years, was immediately suspended. And considering everyone has seen him naked, he's probably never going back to the school again. He was bullied out of his own job by his own students. The teens were arrested and charged with misdemeanor disclosure of private images, but they were released soon after on $5,000 bonds. 6. Covid19 Pokemon. A man in Georgia was recently sentenced to spend some time in jail after he illegally obtained relief money for COVID-19 and used it to purchase $57,000 worth of Pokemon. His name is Vinath Odemsine from Dublin, Georgia. He pleaded guilty in October of 2022 to one count of wire fraud. He submitted false information to the United States Small Business Administration when applying for a coronavirus relief loan. He claimed to own an entertainment services business, saying he needed money to help him through the pandemic. In reality, this guy was a total faker. He received $85,000 from the loan program, then used it to buy a Charizard. Yes, Vinath spent all that money on a single Pokemon card worth $57,789. He could have bought a house, he could have bought a brand new car, or he could have even invested that money and actually started a real business. Instead, he bought a single Pokemon trading card, a large red lizard that became wildly popular in the 90s, for an impossible amount of money. Of course, people are allowed to do whatever they want with their money. If you want to save up $50,000 to buy a piece of cardboard, that's perfectly fine. But this guy cheated. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Vinath claimed his non-existent business employed 10 people and grossed $235,000 a year. But it was all a fraud, and now Vinath is paying the price. He was given 3 years in prison and ordered to forfeit the card that he had purchased. He was also fined $10,000 and forced to pay $85,000 in restitution. 5. Tricking Girl Scouts. Sometimes faking it can be funny, but not when the Girl Scouts are involved. A man in Oregon has been busted for tricking Girl Scouts by purchasing their cookies with counterfeit cash. What a tool! A police report was filed by Tiffany Brown on February 16, 2020. She was furious because a man had given her daughter fake money to purchase a box of peanut butter tagalongs. And because the local troop does not recoup its Girl Scouts for any lost profits, all the money for the cookies came out of their own pocket. It was an absolutely despicable crime, and one thing fake money should never be used for. You can't just go around tricking Girl Scouts. Luckily, the victim was able to give a great description of her robber to the police. The cops then worked with a local Walmart to identify the man the next time he arrived at the store. His name is Camden Stevens Ducharme, and he's been arrested on charges of theft and forgery. 4. The Fake Doctor. A man in India pretended to be a doctor. He didn't walk into hospitals and perform surgeries on people while in his doctor disguise. Instead, the man named Bidhu Prakash Swain pretended to be a doctor to trick middle-aged divorced women into marrying him. He prowled dating sites and social media, built up a whole fake persona for himself, and swindled at least 14 women into tying the knot. But after the marriage was official, that's when things went wrong. The fake doctor would leave the woman saying he had to travel for work. But when he took off, he carried as much of their money as possible. And if you're thinking to yourself, what kind of crazy person would fall for this? The truth is that a lot of people do. According to the FTC, romance-related scams tripled from 2016 to 2020. During the year of 2020, when everyone was locked down in their houses, victims lost somewhere around $300 million being swindled by a cyber romance. Each victim sent, on average, $2,500 to a random person on the internet. As for our fake doctor, he's been on the prowl since 2002. According to India Today, he got married for the first time in 1982 and has been scamming people most of his life. It was a big success until 2020 when one of his wives uncovered the truth about him. When the police launched their investigation, they discovered over 10 stolen ATM cards, different government identification, and fake school certificates. They even found evidence of a different scam where he had been tricking students into paying him cash to secure admissions to certain courses. 3. Anna Delvey. With Netflix's new dramatized documentary, Inventing Anna, the star of the show has gotten a lot of attention. The series on Netflix fictionalized the case of a very real faker, Anna Delvey, aka Anna Sorokin. She moved to New York in 2013 and used her new identity to pretend to be a wealthy German heiress. Amazingly, it worked. She embedded herself inside New York's social scene even though she didn't have any money. She managed to skate by with nothing except her confidence holding her up. In truth, Anna was born in Russia in 1991, moved to Germany in 2007, arrived in London in 2011, and made her way to America, all without any real worthwhile cash. Her first attempt at getting rich involved tricking investors into coughing up money for a fake foundation. When that didn't work, she faked bank statements to show she had access to over $60 million in Swiss bank accounts. She used these fake documents to apply for loans. All the while, she was staying at extremely fancy hotels without ever paying the bills, all while running around with some of the richest people in the city. It all came crashing down on October 3, 2017. That was when Anna was arrested as part of a sting operation and charged on several counts of grand larceny. She was given 12 years in prison. As of 2022, she's still sitting in immigration, waiting to be deported to Germany. 2. Stem cell therapy. Patricia Ashton Durges was elected in November of 2020 to represent Christian County in Missouri. This might shock you, but she was already under investigation for going on local TV and trying to sell stem cells as a cure for Covid-19. Apparently, the community wasn't all that concerned about the ongoing investigation when they elected her. Patricia was already a state lawmaker and a medical professional, and yet she couldn't help herself when it came to a little bit of scamming. She went on local TV and put advertisements on Facebook, claiming to provide her clients with a safe and natural cure for COVID-19 using stem cells. It's a lot to unpack. First of all, stem cells are questionable. We don't even fully know the power of stem cells as a treatment for illnesses. But Patricia took it to a whole other level, as she didn't even use stem cells in her stem cell miracle cure. She purchased amniotic fluid from the University of Utah, marketed it as stem cells, and then charged up to $1,450 per milliliter. She raked in about $200,000 for treatments from between December 2018 to May 2020. She didn't only cure COVID-19 with her fake stem cell shots, but also things like kidney disease and Lyme disease. Basically, she had a cure for anything with a fake shot of amniotic fluid. This fraudster was recently indicted by a grand jury. Hopefully, she'll be put behind bars soon before she can trick anybody else. 1. Fake astronauts. Two men wearing homemade spacesuits managed to swindle over $150,000 out of a businessman in 2018. These fakers claimed to have a deal with NASA and said they could generate electricity from nothing but thunderbolts. The dynamic duo were a father and son team, Virender Brar and his boy, Nitin Brar. They told their victim that they were about to sell a very powerful device to NASA as soon as it was ready. All they needed was a little bit of seed money. They duped at least 30 people around the capital of Delhi into giving them cash to help in their endeavor. They tricked people by already looking rich. They also showed off a lot of fake technology that didn't mean anything and strolled around in their fake astronaut suits. When police raided their home, they found a laptop and printer, foreign checkbooks, fake identification, and random stickers saying things like anti-radiation. When the victim was asked why he gave them so much money, he said he was tricked by the fact that they were wearing expensive watches and driving luxury cars. He believed their spacesuits were real and that they were very close to finalizing a deal with NASA for their new technology. In truth, the father and son team had made their spacesuits out of tinfoil. They were just a couple of phonies who preyed on some businessmen who didn't know any better. Which of these fakers do you think really got what they deserved? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe to the channel and come back soon. See you then. Bye.